A few weeks ago, we began to read from the hands-on Bible that we present to children and families in fulfillment of their baptismal promises. Parents place a Bible in their children's hands, but not only give them a Bible, but study the Bible, and we equip families for devotions. Lance and Katie were referencing that when they talked about that stepping stone. Left my clicker. So there we were in Shanghai, China. Been away since the 17th of March. We got back a couple of days ago. If ever there was a day for me not to be trying to have learned my sermon and to be reading it, this would be it, because there's a little bit of lag in my mind here. But anyway, we splurged on our last night in China, and this is the view from our hotel room in Shanghai. Me being the photographer I am, with my iPhone. Actually, Ann might have taken this picture. I'm not sure. But that was the view. And kind of a good reference point for beginning our thoughts today on Faith 5, because throughout Lent we've been trying to get a view of life and the life of faith that we hope for, God hopes for and wants for us, and kind of diagnosing. When you look at your life from a few hundred feet and you survey what's going on, you can assess how am I doing? How am I experiencing what God wanted for us, to be able to love God with our heart and our soul and our mind, to be able to love our neighbor even as we love ourselves? How real is that? How much is that sinking into our daily living? It's called Faith 5. We've been walking through 5 faith practices, and today we're going to spend a little bit of time thinking about prayer. When we began this journey, Sundays and Wednesdays of Lent, on each of these themes, I invited you to imagine a family with a teenager. Imagine a family with a 15-year-old daughter or son. And in that family, not only do the parents or the adult pray for the teenager, which I suspect in most cases is pretty common, even if that prayer is inside of our own mind and we're saying, God, help us with this situation. Not only do the parents pray for the kids, but the teenager prays for the parent. And what's more, the parent knows that they're being prayed for by the teenager because they experience it together. And that would be a pretty unique experience for a lot of families. I know it would have been in the one I grew up in. I grew up in one of these families where we went to church every Sunday, but you never talked about what it meant or made any kind of like application of the experience. You just had to go to church, but you didn't talk about it. And, you know, to actually have heard my parents pray for me or for me to pray for them is kind of almost unimaginable in that day and age. I wonder for how many of us we find ourselves not having this kind of real down-to-earth experience. The goal of Faith 5, these are 5 simple faith practices. The idea is 5 minutes. Truth to tell, if you get into it, it's probably going to be a little longer, but it's very, very simple. And for example, with pray, we're not talking about some deep, long sermon prayer. We're probably talking about a little sentence prayer. A young person heard the highs and lows of their parents. The parents heard the highs and lows of a young person. and they shared those with each other. They read a verse from the Bible, or maybe a story from the Bible from this church that week. They talked a little bit about what that story or that verse might say to them about God, or maybe what it might say about their highs and lows, and they prayed together a little sentence prayer, most likely, something like, God, the teenager might pray, help Dad with his boss, dealing with his boss, because Dad shared a low about something at work, or help Mom with her back, if Mom said something about a physical ailment. That kind of simple moment, which would have a lot of power, wouldn't it? If you actually heard a young person, one of your loved ones pray for you, or you pray for them. And of course, it's not just about parents and kids. It can be a prayer it can be a Faith 5 moment that a single person shares with a friend. You live alone, but you've got somebody that you feel like their heart is with you, and you do Faith 5 together. It's for grandparents with grandkids. It's for childless couples or life partners to share with each other these simple moments of faith becoming real. The whole idea is to experience rituals. Now, I don't imagine you've heard that word before. Ritual? I hadn't heard it. I had heard of ritual, and maybe you know that word, or if you don't know the word, you know what a ritual is, because if you're here in church, you've probably experienced rituals in your life, in faith communities, in churches, and ritual is worship itself. There's ritual moments in worship, like the sacrament of communion. There's ritual moments like lighting candles. Prayer itself is a ritual. The trouble with rituals in this day and age is that for many, many people, they no longer have a real power or a sense of connecting us to that love of God with our heart and our mind and our soul, or that love of our neighbor as we love ourselves. These rituals over time have become something that we sort of do without maybe knowing, and without talking about, and them becoming real. And it's precisely what is reality for many, many people today. So Faith 5 is an attempt at creating rituals. Living ritual moments that can be as simple as a family around the table, sharing a high or a low, what I'm excited about in my life, what I'm groaning with in my life. This is what's going well today. This is where I'm straining in this season of my life. And sharing it with somebody. And opening up the Bible and reading at least one verse. I love how Marcia has equipped the families that are in her group. She's got a little fish bowl that she gives them, or she gives them about 30 Bible verses, and they put them in the fish bowl, and somebody at the table or at the evening time selects the verse from the fish bowl. I like to use the daily text. There's all kinds of ways to get that Bible verse or the Bible story. But you read that, and then you ask, what does it mean? What's it telling us about God? How does it apply to my highs and lows? You pray based on that conversation. Simple sentence prayer, one for another, and you have a blessing. And it's Faith 5. And it has an incredible power for making faith real and alive in relationships with others. See, the reality today is at an alarming level. Faith has become distanced from the daily life of people who are Christians, let alone those who would say, I'm not a Christian. And so Faith 5 is creating these ritual opportunities. You know, when you fly across to the other side of the world, you have lots of hours. And in about 28 hours of flight time, or whatever it was, and a few more hours on some trains traveling to different areas in China, I had a lot of reading time. So I read 2 books. One of them is called You Lost Me. And it's on this subject of what's happening in our culture today, in the generation that's coming into adulthood. The theme, You Lost Me, tells a story of why young Christians are leaving the church and how they are rethinking faith. It's actually a second in 2 books written by a very incredible organization called the Barna Institute that is researching how faith is experienced in faith communities across the country today. Not just denominational, mainline churches like Lutherans or Methodists or Episcopal or something like that, but also Catholic, Roman Catholic, Orthodox communities, non-denominational communities, evangelical communities. All of them are seeing a very common pattern, and that is that when it comes to the generation of those who are 19 to 30, 35 years old, alarming levels of these young adults are saying about the faith that they grew up in, you lost me. It's no longer living in me. If they ever got it, they get to be 19, 25, 30, 35, and of their faith, you lost me. Not only are rituals no longer living in their life experience, no longer are these 19 to 30-year-olds not just going to church or finding that to be meaningful, but of course, in rituals mean very little. And so this sense of you lost me is documented in incredible studies that this institute has done, exhaustive research. I don't know if that kind of thing interests you, research and all that sociology of faith and life, but it really doesn't have to for you to get the point. Think right now about the 19 to 30, 35-year-olds that you know. Think about yourself and your friends if you're in that age group. Think about your grandkids if they're in that age group. Think about the people you know and ask, how real is the ritual practice of a faith community for them, let alone in ritual practices, such as a simple thing of sharing my life with another person, looking at a Bible verse, talking about what it might mean, praying a simple sentence prayer and receiving a blessing. It's a sobering reality today, and it's been our pattern to lift up a family that experiences Faith 5 through a video clip. I want to share one here in just a moment. A family that's begun to practice Faith 5. And I love this clip because it presents some realities about life today. You look at this family and you say, yeah, I get it. Not only what we've already pointed out, but how things have changed. From 1960, when you surveyed the 19 to 30-year-olds, 91% of them would have said, I'm a Christian. You survey that same population group today, 62%. And the disconnect that's real today? Many of us remember being 19 to 30, right? The old days? And it's always been common, I think, for that age group to step away from the church at least a bit. Didn't it happen in our generation when we were that? Like if you go away to college or you move away from home or whatever, you enter a stage of life where you step away from those rituals, those faith communities, and it's pretty common, and we always, expectation is, when I have kids myself, I'll go back. Well, here's what's happening today. They're not coming back. How they are rethinking faith and leaving faith communities. The disconnect is rapid in this time and day and age, and startling. There are certainly exceptions, but all across faith communities, mainline Lutheran, Methodist, Episcopal, etc., Presbyterian, Roman Catholic, Orthodox Catholic, non-denominational, evangelical, they're all experiencing this reality of young people who say, "You lost me." Part of the dynamics that you see in this family we're going to see here is it also points out the change, the radical change in our culture in terms of how families are structured. In 1960, only 5% of families in that, with young people that in 19 to 30-year-olds in that day and age would have said they grew up in a single-parent family system. Today, 42%. And if you spend your life, as I've spent most of my ministry in Milwaukee, planting a church, we had about 40,000 people we called living in our service area. 90% of the people in that 40,000 population service area, 90% were single-parent families. And so these striking shifts that make it very difficult to be the church today. And you couple that with the fact that we are in an increasingly radically diverse culture. Ethnicity is just one of the realities, but we know there's all kinds of differences in people today in terms of socioeconomic background and education and religion and orientation, etc. It's very, very challenging, and churches today have been experienced as very exclusive and very judgmental, and the young populations today, they want nothing to do with that kind of a faith experience. And so the diversity is another challenge. Anyway, you kind of get a glimpse of this in this family today that we're going to watch now, and how they experience Faith 5.
He will turn the hearts of parents to the children, and the hearts of children to their parents.
As they get older, I'm kind of afraid of them pulling away. I have 16, 14, and 14-year-old godson, and just really kind of a little afraid of them starting to get more focused on friends, not so much on family. And then we started your program, and I was actually very apprehensive in the beginning. I started thinking that they're too old. They're too old. They're not going to want to do this. And it was to the point where one night I had gone to bed and forgotten about it. And Patrick says, "We didn't do Faith 5." So the kids are bringing it up, which is really, really cool. It's been wonderful. I have really noticed the difference in saying, "How was your day?" as it compared to what was your high and what was your low. Before you say, "Okay, how was your day?" "Fine." "What did you do in school today?" "I don't remember." But you're like, "Okay, what was the best part of your day?" And next thing you know, the waterfall comes out. What was the worst part of your day? And that comes out. What has happened in the past 24 hours that you felt Jesus in your life? And a day hasn't gone by that one of the kids hasn't had the opportunity or been able to say how Jesus affected them within the past 24 hours. Even if it's, "I woke up," You know, it was something, and how Jesus was in their life. So us really being able to relate to each other, as a single mom and, you know, with 3 kids, it's interesting to be able to say, these are my lows. And every night we rotate on who prays. And we do it, youngest to oldest. And that's something they came up with. The first night I prayed. The second night I prayed. The third night I got ready to pray, and Michael said, I thought we were going to take turns. You know, so that was pretty cool. So now we rotate on who, you know, ends the session with prayer. It's nice to know that when I bring out my low, the kids are praying for it. You know, they're praying, okay, I hope mom doesn't have to sit in traffic for 3 hours to get to work tomorrow. You know, God, please, you know, we pray that mom has a good meeting. It's nice to be able to express the lows, because as parents, we tend to try to keep these from our kids. We don't want to burden them with what's going on in our lives. And I think what I've learned is filling them in, especially as teenagers, filling them in on the little bits and pieces that are kind of weighing me down has really allowed them to lift me up. You know, I come home the next day and, Mom, how was your meeting? You know, it's been really cool. It's great. Everything. We talk about everything. Nothing is off the table.
Hearts of parents to the children, and the hearts of
I thought we were going to take turns. God wanted to be so real for us and in us that he sent his son Jesus. And Jesus spent his time teaching a way of life so that we could experience this fullness of love for him and a fullness of love for the people we travel this journey with on this planet, and a fullness of love for ourselves. He thought we were going to take turns. He thought we were going to pass it on, and that this would live generation to generation to generation. So meanwhile, back in China, there we are. And it's a really wonderful opportunity. Our whole purpose was to spend time with our son on the right there. He's been living there now into his 15th month. And of course, it's been 15 months since we've seen him. Really rare, once in a lifetime, I'm assuming, opportunity for us to experience that amazing, amazing country. But truth to tell, it was all about being with our son and all the relationships that he's generated. And so we get to the end of our week, and we're like, okay, it's our last night. What do we want to do for our last kind of dinner time together? And we have all week been enjoying amazing food, just incredible. Probably doesn't surprise you in China, Chinese food. But what would surprise you is not like the Chinese food that we go out to our, number one Chinese restaurant or whatever. This is really awesome, and community meals where the food is on the circular thing that rotates, and you even learn how to use those chopsticks, and just awesome food. Also, truth to tell, some very interesting food once in a while. But all in all, fantastic. You can just see why the healthy body types and whatnot of that healthy food. But our son, he's been, in an area where he doesn't, he eats, only, and he misses some of the old comfort foods from America. So we get to get into the city in an area where there's some of the Western kinds of things. What would you like to eat on our last night? We walk by and he says, it's Pizza Hut. Let's have pizza. So we go in to have pizza, and I, thinking it's our last night, I say, all right, let's have Faith 5. Let's do Faith 5. And at that moment, we were all kind of hit by the emotion that this was our time where we would not, this is our last evening. And he's made it pretty clear that, the trajectory of his life is, well, who knows, He's not coming home real soon, and if he does come back, it'll be a short stop before he goes to his next stop far away. And so it really hits, this little boy that you raised, and he's off, and you're just not going to get that much time. And it was just too emotional in that moment to try to do Faith 5. So we walked around the city, and these amazing high-rise. Shanghai is just unbelievable. Went back to our digs for the night, that high hotel, and by then it's dark, and now the city lights are everywhere, and we're sitting there looking out the window, and having collected ourselves a little bit, we said, okay, let's do it now. Let's spend some time in Faith 5, and we did. We talked about our highs and our lows, and we opened up a little Bible verse, happened to be the daily text. What's it tell us about God? What's it maybe say about our highs, our lows? And we prayed a little prayer, one for each other. We rotated to each other, little sentence prayers. And we shared a blessing.